Much, Minister Avi Dichter, for joining us here at Rising Bharat. I can definitely vouch for this. India is rising, Israel is rising, and certainly our friendship seems to be rising as well. You're the Minister for Agriculture. You have met with the Indian Minister for Agriculture. How would you describe the state of the relationship between India and Israel, particularly in agriculture?
Well, thank you for inviting me here. And before talking about our friendship in agriculture, let me say something about what indicates real and true friendship. In October 7th, 2023, when the horrible attack from Gaza occurred and Israelis got tortured, killed, murdered, raped, kidnapped, one of the first leaders in the world that called Prime Minister of Israel, Benjamin Netanyahu, was the Prime Minister of India, Prime Minister Modi. And he offered any help that Israel needs. That's true friendship. When it comes on time. Israel is a tiny country, but we have a large variety of climate areas. In Israel, you can ski in the north. By noontime, take the car, drive all along the Jordan Valley, Dead Sea, to the Red Sea, and in the late afternoon, you can swim in the Red Sea. It means that even in agriculture, we have so many climate areas, including deserts, arid areas, semi-arid areas, and that makes Israel a kind of a laboratory that we offered India to take our experience, what goes good and what went wrong in terms of agriculture. And if you want to make mistakes, make new mistakes. And that's what, grosso modo, was the main discussion today with the Minister of Agriculture here in India, Mr. Chauhan.
You talked about the October 7th terror attack, and you said Prime Minister Modi was one of the first leaders to call Prime Minister Netanyahu. How would you describe the current situation in Gaza? What is the state of the conflict in Gaza?
Right at the October 7th at night, at the Israeli Cabinet of Defense and Political Issues, we put 3 goals to this war in Gaza. One was to destroy the military infrastructure of Hamas and the Palestinian terror organization in Gaza. The second goal was to topple the regime of Hamas in Gaza. And another goal was to release all hostages that were taken to Gaza. We have never faced such a situation that people were kidnapped from their homes, live and dead, babies and adults, men, women, Israelis, non-Israelis, Jewish people and non-Jewish people, including Muslims. 255 hostages were in Gaza. We still have there 59 hostages. At least 22 are alive. So the war won't be ended before reaching those 3 goals. And we have time. It's true that the most urgent goal is to release the hostages in Gaza. So the war in Gaza will not be ended before reaching those 3 goals.
But we had a ceasefire in Gaza between January and sometime in March, and the feeling is that Israel is the one that broke the ceasefire. Why did you do that?
Ceasefire sounds as it sounds. It's a ceasefire between 2 fires, before and after. And we had 2 agreements about releasing hostages and reaching a ceasefire, and releasing terrorists from Israeli jail. When I say terrorists, I mean Palestinian terrorists who murdered Israelis, who injured Israelis, and some of them even more than one, more than 10, more than 31. But that's the price you pay for such a disastrous situation when your people are being kidnapped into Gaza. We had the first agreement and Hamas broke it. That's why we returned fire and we got back into a war. At the second one, it lasted about 42 days up until we were supposed to reach another discussion. Hamas began to open fire and we didn't wait up until it will escalate. We just responded with a war. That's the situation now. I don't know if and when we are going to reach another ceasefire in order to release hostages. It's on the table. The meeting in Washington between Prime Minister Netanyahu and President Trump part of it was about releasing the hostages. And as I said, we need to bring them home till the last one of them, those who are alive and those who are not.
You mentioned Prime Minister Netanyahu and President Trump met yesterday at the White House. The whole world is talking about President Trump, the tariffs and what have you. What is your reading of the new Trump administration in Washington?
We met the first Trump administration almost 5 years ago or 8 years ago. And as Israelis, we must say that he made some issues that we've never seen before. He was the first American president who decided and implemented the moving of the American embassy for the city of Tel Aviv to the capital of Israel, Jerusalem. It is something that nobody did it before. So when he says he's going to move, he means business. And that's President Trump in my eyes. He means business. When he told the Houthis in Yemen, the terrorists, the finger of Iran in the south part of our area, when he told them, if you don't stop firing towards Saudi Arabia, Israel or other countries, and if you're not going to open the Straits of Bab el-Mandab, who leads to the Suez Canal and to Aqaba port and Eilat port in Israel, we are going to attack you. When they didn't stop, the United States started to launch airstrikes, severely airstrikes, including this night. He means business. Now, when he told Iran, if you are not going to get into direct discussion with us, the United States, we are going to take severe steps. When the United States attacks Yemen, it's not really Yemen the target, the Houthis, the terrorists. It's Iran. They understood that bringing so many carriers into the Indian Ocean, it's not for the terrorists in Yemen, but to show a very red light to the Iranian regime. Be careful. Me, President Trump, as far as I understand, I'm not going to play a game with you. Either we're going to talk or I'm going to strike.
But President Trump is also talking about removing everybody from Gaza, making Gaza into a Riviera. You think that is possible, feasible?
President Trump, as far as I heard, he didn't say to move everybody from Gaza. He mentioned a number. I don't know, Mr. Zaka, if you remember the number. 1.7 million people from Gaza. You know why 1.7 million amongst the 2.3 million who live in Gaza? Because that's the definition of UNRWA, the United Nations Relief Administration for Refugees. They said 71% of the Gazans are refugees since 1949. 71%, that's the 1.7 million people. In Gaza, 25% of the Gazans live today 2025 in 8 refugee camps. Nobody since then, including UNRWA, that was established in order to rehabilitate those refugees, didn't do anything. The only country that started to rehabilitate some of them was Israel by building some new neighborhoods for refugees, but that's a small number. He means business, President Trump. He means to rehabilitate 1.7 million refugees in Gaza. Whether people will be ready to move to countries who are ready to accept them, or he'll try to convince them. It's not an Israeli job. We cannot take 1.7 million people and rehabilitate them all over the world. That's something that a giant like the United States can do, a superpower. And that's practically the job of UNRWA. But UNRWA, instead of doing that, they are building themselves. We have the UNHCR, the United Nations organization who takes care of 65 million refugees worldwide. You know how many employees they have? 10,000. UNRWA, who takes care of 5.5 million refugees only, they have 30,000 employees. So that's an absurd that many countries understood it. The United States stopped financing UNRWA. And when he comes and says, I want to rehabilitate refugees from Gaza and other countries, that's something that I believe he means it.
I also want to talk about the India, Israel, Middle East, Europe corridor, and I believe you have some maps to show us how this corridor might be possible. And you also want to show our audience here the kind of threats that the state of Israel faces from around its neighborhood.
You're right, Mrs. Dhaka. That's,
can we have the slide up, please?
The slide about people are not aware what does it mean Israel. You know, here you see the spot, the red spot. That's the state of Israel. That's the state of Israel. It's half of Kerala.
It's half of Kerala.
Try to imagine that we have in the whole region, the green indicates Arab countries. The light green indicates 2 Muslim countries around us, Turkey and Iran, who are not Arabs but Muslims. Iran is deeply involved in what's going on by proxies. We shall show it in a minute. So you can see here that in order to write the name Israel on the map, you need to borrow part of the Mediterranean to write just the name. But Iran, as a strategy, tried to enclave not just the state of Israel, but mainly Saudi Arabia, by building 2 corridors. If we can see the map of the corridors.
Can we show the next slide, please, the corridor map?
And that was a strategy that leads to the vision of Iran. The vision of Iran began in 1979 when they took over Iran, was not Israel, with all respect to Israel, but the goal was to take Mecca and Medina. They believe that Mecca and Medina belongs to Shia and not to Sunnah. So they began to build 2 corridors, the northern one that goes from Iran, Iraq, Syria, Lebanon, and the southern one that goes from Iran to Yemen. The Houthis, they tried to Sudan, but at the beginning they succeeded, then they failed. Now what we are, of course, the northern corridor was broken recently, just last year. Israel broke it in Lebanon, and the rebels in Syria broke it in Syria. There is not a northern corridor. What we are trying to build is a new corridor. Those 2 corridors of Iran are corridors of war, corridors of hatred, corridors of destruction. We are trying to build a corridor of peace, of merchants' supply, of business that goes from India to the Emirates, from the Emirates to Saudi Arabia, Jordan, Israel, and Israel to the European countries, through the Middle East, through the Mediterranean. That's the corridor that we spoke about at the I2U2, Israel, India, UAE, and the United States. That's the corridor of IMEC that it's from India through the Mediterranean to the European countries. That's something that we believe that's a positive corridor. We are in order to destroy the bad corridors. One was destroyed. The second one from the south part through Yemen will be destroyed. It's an absurd that the global world has to suffer from a bunch of terrorists in Yemen that are supplied by sophisticated weapons of Iran. They did it in Lebanon, they failed. Did it in Syria, they failed. They are doing it in Iraq, they will fail. They are doing it in Yemen, they will fail. Because the good guys will beat the bad guys.
Minister, I'll ask you a final question before we let you go. So the only problem is none of these corridors will get built until the war in Gaza stops. So what is your plan for an end game in the war in Gaza?
Let me just explain to those who are not familiar with the details. Gaza is an area of 330 square kilometers. It's a city, a small city in India. When we came in 1967, there were in Gaza 330,000 people. Today, Gaza is the same 330 square kilometers, but with 2.3 million people. There's no hope that Gaza will become, as some people said, it's going to be Singapore of the world. It's not going to be Singapore. Maybe, I don't know, Singapore it's not going to be. Poor it might be. And that's the problem. I mean, when the United States, when President Trump speaks about rehabilitating those people, it's in order to help them more than to help the other countries. Gaza was taken by the terrorists of Hamas in 2007. For the last 18 years, a terror organization is dominating Gaza. We have some other examples in the world I'm sure you are familiar with. So first of all, we have to destroy the military infrastructure, to topple the regime of Hamas, and then I believe that the whole world will be able to solve this problem much better than just the State of Israel.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, Minister Avi Dichter, the Minister of Agriculture for Israel. Thank you very much for joining us at Rising Bharat. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Dichter and Zaka, for those precious insights and a very straightforward conversation. Distinguished guests, let's now shift gears and dive into the world of Indian cinema.